being complicit in the, quote, preparation and execution of the 1994 genocide that killed some 800,000 people. The report released by the Rwandan Ministry of Justice Tuesday accuses 33 French politicians, officials, and soldiers, including former Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin and the late former President Francois Mitterrand, of playing major roles in the genocide. A spokesman for the French Foreign Ministry, Romain Nadal, called the report biased. He said it, quote, contains unacceptable accusations against French politicians and military officials. Rwanda has long accused France of training Hutu militias and providing diplomatic cover for their crimes. This detailed 500-page report is the product of a 2-year inquiry by an independent Rwandan commission. Rwanda's Minister of Justice, Tharcisse Karugarama, issued the report and said his country would try to press charges in an international body.
This should be clear that this report is not just going to lie down, put into some store somewhere. It's a report that's going to be used. It's going to be a report that is going to help in bringing to justice, or in making attempts, very serious attempts to bring to justice people that were involved in committing genocide in this country.
Rwanda cut diplomatic ties with France 2 years ago, soon after a French judge accused Rwandan President Paul Kagame of provoking the genocide by conspiring to assassinate former President Juvenal Habyarimana in 1994. Linda Melvern is an investigative journalist and author. She testified in July 2007 before the Rwanda Commission investigating France's role in the genocide. She's the author of 2 books on Rwanda, A People Betrayed, The Role of the West in Rwanda's Genocide, and Conspiracy to Murder, the Rwandan Genocide. She joins us now on the line from Britain. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Linda Melvern.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can you lay out what the report says? What are the main accusations against France?
I think perhaps the training of the Interahamwe militia. I think this is very detailed evidence from witnesses, and of course one must bear in mind that some of these witnesses have been convicted of genocide. They're former Interahamwe leaders and perpetrators of genocide, but they claim that they were trained by French military officers in Rwandan military camps. The primary means of killing at speed in this genocide was the mobilization of Rwanda's unemployed youth into a militia called the Interahamwe, an estimated 30,000 young men taken from the streets and trained to kill at speed with agricultural tools, and indoctrinated with a racist anti-Tutsi ideology. Now, these former Interahamwe leaders say that they were in part trained by French military officers.
Can you name names? Can you talk about the French leaders, past and present, who they have pointed the finger at, who they are saying are responsible?
Well, this pointing the finger at individual political figures in France is problematic. The French policy towards Rwanda had been largely decided by Francois Mitterrand, the French president, in his second term. And it is worth remembering that France's own inquiry into this in 1998 determined that Francois Mitterrand had been in overall control of the policy, and that it had been completely unaccountable. And I think that this is one of the most important points of all, that this policy had been completely unaccountable to either Parliament or the French press, and that French politicians had not been adequately informed. And the Senate recommended better control by Parliament over military operations. And I think that this is the aspect which makes it so difficult to know who made the decisions in, whether it's the Ministry of Cooperation, whether it's the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It does seem that overall control rested with Francois Mitterrand. And through a network that was traditional in France when it came to French Africa policy, through a network of military officers, politicians, diplomats, senior intelligence operatives, and I must say French mercenaries were involved as well.
French Defense Minister Eve Morin rejected as intolerable allegations that Rwanda said the French military played an active role in the 94 genocide. Also named was Alain Juppé. Can you talk about his significance?
Alain Juppé, as foreign minister, would have been involved particularly, I think, not in the policy towards Rwanda, but the policy as enunciated by France in the Security Council of the UN. And it was on this aspect that I gave testimony to the Rwandan Commission. I had written a book about the UN, a 50-year history, and I was in New York in April 1994 filming the book for a series for BBC, for Channel 4 television called UN Blues. And so I was outside the Security Council in April 1994. French policy at that time was to insist that what was happening in Rwanda was a civil war, and that what was needed in Rwanda was a ceasefire. In the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks of genocide, it is extraordinarily surprising that there was hardly any discussion at all about the genocide that was by then underway. It started on April the 7th. The entire focus of Security Council discussion, as insisted upon by the French, was to discuss civil war and the necessity of a ceasefire. At the time, there were French officers embedded in the elite army units in Rwanda who would have known, I am sure, what was happening. It had happened before. Genocide had been part of political life in Rwanda ever since 1959. To deny knowledge of it, and it's not only France in this, is particularly serious because the decision-making by the Security Council at this stage determined what happened. The force commander of the UN and his estimate that 5,000 troops could have prevented the spread of genocide was not discussed by the Security Council because of the insistence that a ceasefire take place in a civil war.
And Linda Melvern, why, in your analysis, was France propping up the Hutu militias?
I'm sorry, would you repeat the question?
Why, in your analysis, do you think that the French officials and the French government was supporting Hutu militias in Rwanda?
The France, from the beginning, from the very beginning, when military links were forged in the early 60s, France had favored the Hutu cause. The fact that there was an apartheid regime in Rwanda with discrimination against the minority Tutsi was seemingly ignored. The French believed that because Rwanda was ruled by the majority people, the Hutu, then it was a democracy. President Juvenal Habyarimana had been overwhelmingly elected, 96%, in this strictly controlled country. The fact that the minority Tutsi were